Chapter 11. As usual, we arrived early. After greeting Sensei, the guys ran into the changing rooms, while I unwillingly dragged myself behind everyone with my head hung low. Suddenly, I heard Sensei's voice very close to me. "You overcame yourself? Well done." It was so unexpected that I was really taken aback. I looked into his eyes, surprised. He was looking at me intently, his eyes shining with endless kindness and sympathy. And as usual, without giving me time to collect myself, he added, "Well, go ahead and get changed." Meanwhile, another group of people came up and greeted him. They started to tell him about their problems. Dear me, a thought flashed across my mind. Is it possible that he knew about all my thoughts, doubts, and torments? Then, if he knew, maybe that's normal, maybe that's the way it should be. And if he said well done, it means that not all is lost yet. Nevertheless, Sensei's words affected me like an elixir of youth given to an old woman. I rushed to the changing room, having forgotten that only a few minutes earlier, I was hobbling, all broken and tired of this life. "Where are you rushing to?" Tatiana asked, puzzled, watching me put on my kimono with great speed. "I can't believe my eyes. 2 minutes ago you were dying, and now you are rushing headlong into the gym." "Well, Tatiana," I smiled. Andre was right when he said that we shouldn't worry too much. Looking at the surprised expression on her face, I added, "I'm in a hurry to live, so as not to painfully regret the aimlessly lived years." Tatiana laughed, and I ran into the gym overflowing with energy. I joined the other guys who were warming up. To tell the truth, I myself didn't expect such activity from my almost dying body. Where did it come from? 5 minutes before the beginning of the training session, Zhenya, who was warming up next to Stas, looked towards the door and flashed his blinding Hollywood smile. "Wow, what a surprise to see you in this neck of the woods," Zhenya said in amazement. A sturdily built guy, not too tall, with a strong-willed face and military bearing, entered the gym. Zhenya's amazed exclamation made others look around. Sensei and the senior guys came up to the newcomer. "Hi, Volodya. Welcome back. We're glad to see you." When the excited group calmed down a little bit, Sensei asked, "So how was your trip to the south? Did you warm your bones thoroughly at the resort?" I even got sunburnt. I wouldn't wish such a trip on anyone. As they say, if you have nothing to worry about, your commander will help you with it." "What's going on down there?" Zhenya asked. "Don't you watch television, country bumpkin?" Stas said with a smile. "What are you talking about? What television?" "You should know that news in our village is spread through only one channel, rumors. And if somebody doesn't understand, one fist punch in the ear and the fellows' heads clear up. That's how we do it." The guys laughed. Zhenya transformed into the role of a priest and addressed Volodya. "Confess, my son. Confess in detail about your overseas sufferings and about the sorrowful deeds of hell. Relieve thy soul." "Well, Zhenya, even the grave probably won't change you," remarked Volodya, laughing with everybody. He added more seriously, "What can I say? People are freaking out over there. They can't even divvy up a piece of land. They ruined such a great resort. They know how to create a storm in a teacup," Victor agreed. "It's in their blood." "Yes," Zhenya drawled. "They couldn't avoid a bloodshed, unfortunately." "I suppose your teeth chattered in fear too." "We are used to it, Holy Father. It's not my first time." Volodya comically mimicked him. "All right, guys. We'll have enough time to talk." Sensei stopped the humorous exchange of sentiments. "Go change. It's already time to start the training." The warm-up began at an active tempo with moderate exercise stress. I noticed that Volodya, despite being a stocky guy, moved softly and easily, like a snow leopard. When the main crowd finished repeating the basics, Volodya and the speedy guys started emotionally discussing something with Sensei. Having finished our exercises, we also hurried to join them, trying to grasp the subject of the conversation. "What could we really have done over there?" Volodya argued hotly. "We had to work mostly at night in complete darkness and often in cellars. There, you can't use a flashlight or even light a cigarette, or you would instantly get a lead bullet. So many of our guys died because of that. The only thing you can do under such circumstances is to fire back at every sound in the darkness. But you are supposed to have special equipment for night vision, said Stas. Huh, they only show that in movies. But in reality, maybe they have it in anti-terrorist units. As for us, where can we get it from? Why do you need special equipment? Sensei asked, shrugging his shoulders. The human is a lot more perfect than any piece of iron. Volodya reflected and remained silent for a little while before adding, Well, I think I tried it all. I tried squeezing my eyes shut so my vision would adapt faster. We tried to train in the darkness in order to improve the perception of sounds. But all in vain. Still, in most cases, we were caught by surprise despite the fact that we seemed to be ready. Vision and hearing here are absolutely irrelevant, declared Sensei. Humans have a completely different level of perception thanks to which you can control your surrounding space at a desirable distance around you. Volodya glanced at Sensei merrily and said, Sensei, show me. He placed his palm against his heart and added with a smile, My soul missed your examples so much. Sensei grinned, waving his hand in agreement. All right, kamikaze, let's do it. Volodya and the guys developed a whole plan for how to disorient Sensei. Meanwhile, the crowd got excited about the unusual demonstration. Someone brought a thick scarf to blindfold Sensei's eyes, making sure no light could get through. The others discussed how to create more noise and vibration in the air. Our group observed the process with interest, standing next to Stas. Who is this Volodya? Andrei asked. Volodya? He is a friend of Sensei's, one of his old disciples, Stas replied. And how long has he been training with Sensei? Well, I've already been training for 5 years. When I met Sensei, Volodya had just come back from the army. Actually, he had trained with him even before the army. He's a serious man, very athletic, remarked Andrei. Well, I would think so. Volodya is a top-class Sambo fighter. He served in the Marines and in the intelligence units, and after the army, in the Ministry of Internal Affairs. Where does he work now? I asked. Currently, he trains a newly created Special Forces unit. Stas explained. He added, A fine fellow indeed. Our entire group, under Volodya's supervision, sat on the sides of the gym, forming a circle. Sensei walked into the center. Volodya blindfolded his eyes with a scarf, thoroughly covering every possible gap. After this preparation, he disappeared into the crowd. Meanwhile, Sensei took an odd stance. He looked like a tired pilgrim who was taking a rest for a while, leaning on an imaginary staff. Wow! Zhenya exclaimed with admiration, rubbing his hands in anticipation of something special. Shortly, we'll see something very interesting. That's for sure, confirmed Stas, carefully looking at Sensei. What kind of a stance is that? Andrei inquired. If I understand correctly, this is from the style of the old Lama, Stas answered quietly. I have never heard of such a style before. And you'll hardly hear of it. It's an ancient extinct style. As Sensei says, it was forgotten even before the birth of Christ. Today, only a pale imitation of this school remains. In China, it's known as the style of the dragon. Not bad for a pale imitation, Andrei was astonished. As far as I know, the style of the dragon is the most powerful style, as it incorporated the wisdom and power of all of the martial arts schools. Looking once again at Sensei, he added, How do you know about this ancient style? I had an opportunity to see it 2 years ago. Some foreigners came to our dojo. So Sensei, being the polite host, regaled them with the style of the old Lama. That was quite a show, I tell you. We couldn't tear ourselves away from it. After such an advertisement, we stared at Sensei to make sure we didn't miss anything exciting. Meanwhile, Volodya gave the signal, and our entire group started to make an unimaginable noise, chaotically clapping our hands and stamping our feet. Making use of this cover, Volodya started to approach Sensei, going around him clockwise. His movements were soft and light. He stepped like a panther before the jump, getting closer and closer to the enemy. When Volodya neared Sensei's right side with a quick light understep, he started to execute a strike of Mawashigiri to the head. Practically simultaneously, Sensei put his right leg behind and, immediately while rotating, his right hand drew an elegant arch and slightly touched Volodya's face with the edge of his palm. The hand touched him like a light feather, and didn't hit like I expected. Judging by what was to come, it hadn't been an accident or a miss. All movements were executed by Sensei with ease, smoothly, and with complete accuracy. Volodya, however, went flying from this light touch as if he had been hit by a cannonball. His legs flew up, and he was catapulted backward, crashing down with force against the floor. Everybody in the gym lapsed into complete silence. Volodya began to stir, sitting up on the floor. People heaved a sigh of relief and buzzed, like a beehive, discussing what had just happened. How did he manage to fall down? Kostya asked Andrei with curiosity, but the latter shrugged his shoulders. Maybe he just lost his balance, he was standing on one foot. Probably so, because it seemed like the strike was very light. And you can't even call it a strike. Sensei took off the scarf and asked Volodya, "Are you a live suicidal maniac?" "I am," Volodya drawled, holding his right eye. "I don't understand. Where did I make a mistake?" "Your mistake is that you tried to get me from what you thought was my most unprotected side. In other words, from the most vulnerable point." "Of course. That's why you got into trouble. If you had attacked me from the front right away, you would have had more of a chance than attacking from behind or the right side. Had you attacked from behind on the left, you would have been even worse off. But why? Because you think like a human who possesses vision and hearing. How many times did I tell you, you must take into consideration your opponent's way of thinking? Since I see and hear nothing, you could logically assume that my consciousness is controlling the least protected areas, a lot better and more forcefully. And how about the front? In front of me, there is weaker control because the body is already prepared for attack. A man deprived of natural perception is physically ready for a fight in the front, and mentally ready from the rear, which is a lot more dangerous. It means that the more vulnerable the side of the opponent seems to be, the more protected it is, and correspondingly the counterattack can be more unpredictable. And what if I'd had a gun? If you had a gun, we would have had greater use for you tomorrow than today. What do you mean? I mean, we would have at least eaten pirozhki at your funeral. Volodya smiled in reply to Sensei's black humor. Well, no need to. I will bring you pirozhki anyway. When Volodya took his hand away from his face, we were taken aback a little. A big bruise had swollen under his eye. The skin around his eye became dark blue and was covered with blisters, as if after a burn. Girls from our group began to bustle about and brought Volodya a towel which they had wet in cold water. But even this compress didn't help him. Nevertheless, it seemed that Volodya worried about his eye least of all. He stood up, shook his clothes off, and merrily joked with Sensei, while we were commanded to exercise our techniques. After the training, almost at the very end of the additional training, we again heard something interesting. "Sensei, is there such a technique to control the surrounding space that can be taught in a simpler form so that it could be understood and practiced by the guys of my unit?" asked Volodya. The teacher thought for a little while and replied, "Yes, there is such a technique, although you will need a partner for it. It's best to practice it sitting in the lotus pose. You should do the following. Suspend a soft tennis ball on a rope above your head so that when your partner pushes or swings it, its trajectory of flight would coincide with the location of your head. Your objective is simply to learn to dodge it without using your usual organs of control in the surrounding space, and to rely more on intuition. You should perceive the ball in its spiritual interpretation. Try to feel the object approaching the back of your head, and, guided by your internal intuition, move your head before it hits you. The most important thing is to train your consciousness, and once again, we come back to our basics," smiled Sensei. "But seriously, you should bring your mind to a complete calmness so that it reminds you of the mirror-like surface of a lake, and in that full silence of your consciousness, The approaching object, in our case, the ball, will be like a pebble thrown onto that glassy surface, causing ripples, or like a boat. Call it as you wish, but it will affect your space. Everything else is located further away. It could be people standing in a circle or trees on the shore, whatever you prefer. And you are the center of that lake. You should learn to feel any vibration on your surface, any penetration in your space. Finally, you will learn to feel the approaching foreign object and everything that's happening around you. Andre, who stood with us next to Sensei, asked, "Can we also train in this way?" "If you have such a desire, certainly train to your heart's content," answered Sensei. "And in this case, what kind of a perception will be activated?" Volodya asked. "Almost the same as the one during this demonstration. The most important thing is to come out with your consciousness over the boundaries of your body." "And how is that done?" Andre didn't understand. "Well, I'll give you this simple example. Any person, when he stops thinking, when he sits down, relaxes, and tries to calm his thoughts as much as possible, then starts to feel that his consciousness is expanding and going far beyond the boundaries of his body. Consciousness becomes voluminous. It covers enormous spaces. In this case, you simply limit it to a certain place. In the example that I showed you, it was the gym. Although, if you train hard enough, you will be able to feel what is going on at the other end of your district. Actually, it's not that difficult. In other words, the most important thing in the exercise with the ball is to achieve complete calmness of consciousness, like in the example with the lake?" Andre asked again. "Absolutely correct, and make sure that not a single thought could enter that space. That's hard. Hard, but possible. Stas said that the style of the old Lama is very ancient. Is that true?" "Yes." "Has history preserved the names of those who mastered it?" asked Kostya. Sensei smiled, thinking about something, and answered, "From those known to you, perhaps, only Buddha, and of course, his first followers." "Buddha?" said Kostya, surprised. "But I thought that he had a different kind of philosophy, the philosophy of good. What do fists have to do with this?" "Even good can be done with fists," Sensei answered calmly. "But to master that art doesn't mean to attack someone. For them, it was sort of a stage in spiritual development. Thus, our additional training ended, and again we became witnesses to such valuable knowledge and the abilities of Sensei. Our delight was endless. Having changed, we waited for the others near the gym. When the crowd came out to the street, Zhenya happened to glance at Volodya and exclaimed in horror, "My God! What a shiner you have!" At these words, everybody turned their attention to Volodya. His eye was completely swollen, turning into a big black spot. "Don't worry," Zhenya tried to cheer him up, puffing up his chest and declaring, "Bruises make a man more attractive." Volodya replied with a smile, "And how about you? Don't you want to become more attractive?" Everybody burst out in laughter. "Of course he wants to, and I'll be like a witness in that joke." Stas expanded on the situation. When he was asked, "Did you see how one man hit another on the head?" he replied, "I don't know if I saw, but I heard a sound, as if somebody hit something empty." Victor added, "And I will be a second witness. If I am asked why I didn't come to help the victim during the fight, I will answer with a clean conscience. How could I know which of them was the victim when they were thrashing each other so hard?" Another wave of laughter rolled through our crowd. "Come on, guys," Zhenya teased everyone. "Your jokes are good only for soldiers in barracks. Sensei, did you see that? The man hardly said a word and they have already fabricated a case." Chapter 12. Joking and poking fun at each other, the guys got on the way. The weather was calm and the sky was covered with scattered stars. Enjoying the cool of the evening after the intensive training, we didn't notice how our group became a little spread out. Kostya and Tatiana had gone far ahead. Volodya, Zhenya, and Stas lagged somewhere behind, while Victor, Andre, Slava, Yura, and I were walking in the middle with Sensei, idly chatting. As we rounded a corner, We came face to face with a group of miners, about 8 of them, all considerably drunk. They must have hurt Kostya's ego as they passed the couple, since when we came closer, his face was red with rage. Kostya kept recklessly snapping at them, making the drunk men very angry. Andrei added fuel to the fire in an attempt to defend his friend. The most zealous of the miners threw himself into the fray. Andrei and Kostya rushed towards him, but Sensei arrived just in time, blocking their way and addressing the miners. "Calm down, men. Why must you curse here in the presence of women? It ill befits noblemen to swear." "Who the are you?" a furious miner croaked, seizing Sensei by his jacket. "Move along, or I'll break all your bones." At this point, we could not stand it anymore and moved in a crowd towards the instigator. Even I flew into a rage towards these drunkards and was ready at that moment to tear them to pieces. The senior guys ran up to us, but unexpectedly, Sensei stopped all our attempts and gave a sign to Victor for everyone to leave. We grumbled with indignation. But Victor, Stas, Zhenya, and Volodya took us away like diligent shepherds leading a flock of sheep, not letting us stop. I kept turning around, waiting for the teacher to show off one of his super techniques against the 8 opponents. But Sensei only stood there smiling and explained something with gestures as if he were making excuses. When I glanced back the next time, I saw that the smiling miners were fraternizing with him, saying goodbye to him as good friends. Well, really, I thought. What is the point of practicing kung fu for so many years? Judging by the puzzled comments of my friends, I was not the only one who thought that. When Sensei came up to us, Andrei said with indignation, "Why did you make excuses to them? They were the first to come at us and to stir up the trouble. We should have beaten them up to teach them, so they don't do it again. If you hadn't stopped me, I would—" "Surely," Sensei interrupted him, "if I hadn't stopped you, they would have been at least seriously injured, not only in their soft tissues but also in their organs, and they might have even gotten a concussion of the brain. Do you realize that these are men who have families at home, who are probably the only breadwinners of these families? Do you realize that they are miners? Have you ever been in a mine?" "No," Andrei replied. "But I have. These guys, whose ribs you wanted to break, they go down into a mine as if into hell, to a depth of up to 1 kilometer and more. Just imagine the pressure on their bodies. In addition," and Sensei started to list on his fingers, "there is immense heat, lack of oxygen, lots of harmful methane, and coal dust. And furthermore, they realize that they risk their lives every second, because any moment they can be crushed, injured, or even killed. Injuries happen regularly in the mine, and people are deeply affected by all this. Their psyche is always on the brink, so to say, at the breaking point. This state of mind is comparable with the state of mind of soldiers on the front line during the war. That's why Stalin used to say, 'The mine is the second front.' Do you know why they drink? In order to relieve their stress, this internal feeling of permanent fear. That is why highly qualified specialists in psychology and medicine should work with miners for them to overcome this psychological block. But of course they don't get this help. That's why many of them drink." "Yes," Kostya sighed. "If not for drunkenness, then forever man would not know slavery." "Exactly. Besides, every miner who has been working for a long time in the mine has a clear understanding that he has no future. You have prospects like finishing college and making a career, but they have no prospects other than to croak in the mine or to die of diseases they contracted there. They understand it quite clearly. But they have their own pride and megalomania, the same as yours." "Megalomania? No," Andrei negated. "I don't have any." "Really? But you just wanted to beat them up only because they bothered you. This is evidence of your megalomania, that you, such a king, have been offended. They have the same pride, but unlike you, they don't have any future. And you want to deprive them of their last? Just imagine what would have happened with them, with all their stress, unrealized ideas, dreams, and lost chances. If they had come to their senses in intensive care after your beating, it would have brought them additional suffering, much stronger even than physical pain. What for? We hung our heads, feeling ashamed. Although Sensei directed this explanation mainly to the men, all of this was quite applicable to me as well. His words had completely shaken me. I felt some internal discomfort caused by my recent aggressive thoughts, and I felt very ashamed of myself. Suddenly, I perceived the whole depth of Sensei's thoughts and realized how well he understands and feels each person. "What for?" the teacher repeated. "Would you suffer if you just apologized and walked away?" "No. Nothing would have happened to you. You understand very well that you are capable of crippling them all with just your legs." "Of course I could have." Andre started to flare up again. "You see, it's your megalomania again. But I teach you to train your body, not to beat up people on the streets. The main point of the martial arts is completely different, and all these techniques may never be used by you in your whole life. I hope to God they'll never be used. Your task is to learn to understand the cause and effect, the depth and the essence of the situation, and to resolve it peacefully." "What did you say to them?" Kostya asked. "It's very simple. I explained to them that they had children like you, and that another group of drunken men like them might bother their children and beat them. I described this case simply from the human point of view. Notice that their megalomania has not suffered, and what is more important, they left satisfied, with the intention to defend others like you. Therefore, everything may be solved much easier, with peace." After a small pause, he added, "Any fool can snarl and punch. But do not give in to your animal instincts. It's much more important to be human in any situation, to understand what causes this aggression and why, and how to solve the dispute in the right way so as to gain a friend instead of making an enemy." As we came to the tram stop, Sensei concluded, "Remember that any blow delivered by you in anger will come back to you in the end." We stood in silence, glancing at Sensei in shame. Finally, after arranging the next meeting, we went home. Chapter 13. We were silent for almost the whole journey home. As we neared our stop, Andre, who had sat all this time with a thoughtful air, burst out, "I feel so guilty after Sensei's speech." "Indeed," Kostya agreed. "I also wonder why I got involved with those guys. As they say, silence is golden." "Don't worry," Andre reassured him. "You see how it turned out. Every cloud has a silver lining. Yeah, it's awesome how Sensei has rebooted our brains." It will take a long time to digest it, I thought. All the way back, I was tormenting myself, not as much with thoughts about the incident, but about myself. Something in my usual inner state was off. But what exactly? I replayed the conversation with the teacher in my mind over and over again and felt this discomfort. And stop. It dawned suddenly on me. Of course, it was that new feeling, when this powerful blow shook the huge underwater rock of ignorance and egoism. Suddenly, a long-forgotten deep feeling emerged in me. My persona could not comprehend it completely, but when it arose to the surface of my consciousness, I understood what Sensei wanted to say. It happened to me for the first time. I understood his simple truth clearly. It was the real discovery for my internal world. I was so happy to feel it, as if I had managed to reconcile with myself. I came home in an elated mood. It turned out that a surprise awaited me there as well. "We have good news," my mother said, with her charming smile beaming. "Uncle Victor has called us today from Moscow. He managed to arrange treatment with the best professor from that clinic, so we just have to set up an appointment." If I had heard this news before, I would have been extremely happy. But now it struck me that I didn't really care what was happening to my head on the physical level. The main thing was what I realized inside myself. It was some new level of perception that concerned the soul more than the body. But in order not to ruin my parents' good mood, out loud I said, "That's great. I had no doubt. It is easy for Uncle Victor with his high standing and connections. He is a nice guy and a real go-getter." The whole next day, my persona kept thinking about this new feeling. I returned to a full-fledged life, so to say, with my body and especially with my soul. And when it was time to go to the meditation class, I couldn't wait to get there as soon as possible. This time, it was my persona who hurried along sluggish Tatiana to pack up her things more quickly. We came to the tram stop and met the boys there. "Girls, just imagine," Kostya said, laughing. "Sensei has almost ruined our Andre." "What happened?" we asked. Andre stood, silent but smiling, and Kostya continued with excitement. "After we saw you to the door, we headed for home. But on the way, some guys started to bother us. They seemed to have this urge for a cigarette but didn't have a lighter. Andre was a real gentleman and did his best to explain to them that we don't smoke and would not recommend it for their own health. Besides," he added, "haven't you heard that the Department of Health warns that smoking is bad for your health?" He concluded that instead of poisoning their lungs with this disgusting thing and hanging around the back alleys and doing nothing, they should take up sports, for example kung fu. It would be more beneficial for both their souls and their bodies. "And?" Tatiana asked impatiently. "They started to look for trouble." "And Andre?" "Just picture it. Our Andre began to deliver a speech about their miserable life, said that their words would boomerang back to them. I thought he was a goner. But then I saw it was all right." What happened next? What happened next? Tensions were growing. Andre kept his patience for a while, enduring their insults, but then in order to be more convincing, he smashed their faces and concluded the lesson by saying, "You see, all your bad words boomerang against you with the same force." "That's wild," I said, surprised. "So what did it all end with?" Tatiana asked with a smile. "Any victims?" "Everything was all right." Kostya waved his hand. "Ah, I forgot to tell you the funniest thing. Afterwards, they asked him if they could be his disciples." Everybody laughed, but for some reason I was uncomfortable. First, I didn't expect such a stupid thing from Andre. And second, I felt sorry for Sensei. "Andre, you are really twisted," Tatiana said, laughing. "Right, exactly," Kostya kidded. "He is a dangerous man. An old offender. He usually steals my great sayings and puts them into the most inappropriate context." "Don't exaggerate by telling us about your great sayings," Andre teased him. "Our new Socrates, so to say." "Why Socrates? There were more famous people in this world." This funny dialogue would have continued endlessly, but just then our tram came. Chapter 14. We left early for the meditation class, and as it turned out, it was not in vain. Andre undertook the task of leading us to the secret glade, reassuring us that he knew the way. For about half an hour, we strolled about the streets of the village, exciting all the neighborhood dogs. Finally, frantically arguing with each other where the turn was, our group came to a small lake. "You lousy pathfinder," Kostya said. "Where is your glade?" "Theoretically, it should be here," Andre shrugged his shoulders. "Sure, but in reality, it was driven by floodwater to the other side. Let's go back." On the way back, we bumped into Zhenya. "Finally, we find another living soul," Kostya sighed with relief. "Have you been lost in our Shanghai?" Zhenya poked fun at us. "Yeah, we relied on the memory of this pathfinder." "Where is the glade?" Andre asked. "Over there." Zhenya waved his hand in a completely different direction. "I told you we took the wrong turn. There was no hillside," Kostya reproached Andre. "And how come you are here?" Tatiana asked Zhenya. "Don't you know? I can locate any person at the energy level. I need to only think about it." "Don't joke with us," Kostya said with a smile. "But really, what are you doing here?" "You're so pesky. I live here. Live. Zhenya said jokingly. "I had just come outside the gate and saw your flock rushing to the lake. I didn't even have time to open my mouth. Well, I thought they will figure it out soon and go back. And so it happened. I saw you coming back 5 minutes later. I went to the road so you wouldn't mistake me for a post again." We beamed with smiles. thrilled with such an opportune meeting, and together went on to the glade. In that secluded nook, created with love by nature, almost everyone had already gathered, including Sensei and Volodya. We loudly joined the others, greeting them. Having noticed that it was Zhenya who brought us there, Sensei asked jokingly, "Has this poor excuse for a pathfinder organized a tour for you again?" "No, we have one of our own now," Kostya nodded to Andrei. "This one surpassed even Zhenya." And then Kostya started to eloquently recall our adventures. He was so carried away by the overall laughter of the crowd. He became so expressive that he blurted out more than necessary, something that we had decided to hide from Sensei. He said, "Well, really? Now imagine entrusting him with disciples after that. He will lead them into such a dead end that he will not know how to get out of it." Which disciples? Sensei caught on to the word, although it seemed to me he had not been listening too attentively before. Well, Kostya became confused after he realized he had said too much. "There was this situation." "Which situation?" Sensei showed interest. Kostya could do nothing but reluctantly tell all the facts. Andrei also joined the conversation, making an attempt to justify his behavior with good intentions. Sensei, after listening to all the babble, shook his head. "You know, there is an old, very ancient parable. Once upon a time there lived a king who had an only son. One day, he heard that there was a great martial arts master who was famous even among kings for his wisdom. He was said to work wonders because he made an excellent master from an ordinary village boy in just 1 year. The king made up his mind to send his son to him. 1 year passed and the king asked, 'So, has my son mastered the path of a warrior?' 'Not yet,' the master replied. 'He is too self-confident and he wastes his time on pride. Come back in 5 years.' In 5 years, the king asked the master the same thing. 'Not yet.' His eyes are still full of hatred and his energy boils over excessively. Another 5 years passed. The master said to the king, 'Now he is ready. Look at him. He is as if carved from a stone. His spirit is flawless. The completeness of his internal virtues is perfect. His challenge will not be accepted by any warrior, as they would run away in fear just from his glance.' The king asked the master, 'Why did my son's path turn out to be so long? He is much smarter than that village boy.' And the master replied, 'The reason is not so much in the mind as in the heart of a man. If your heart is open and your thoughts are pure, your spirit is flawless. And this is the very essence of the path of a warrior. The village boy came to me with a flawless spirit and I just had to teach him the technique. Whereas your son has spent years learning this wisdom. Without this source of power, he would not be able to make a single step on the path of a warrior.' Rejoicing at his son's success, the king said, 'Now I see that he deserves to take a throne.' 'No, father,' the young warrior replied. 'I have found something greater. Before, my mind was limited only to material wishes, but now it is endless in spiritual cognition. The greatest power and all the gold of the world fades in comparison, like gray dust under the foot of a wayfarer. A wayfarer is not interested in the dust. He is fully focused on that which he discovers over the horizon with his every step.' Andrei hung his head, ashamed. There was a long pause. But then Nikolai Andreevich joined our company, and the discussion switched to other problems, including the meditations practiced by us at home. 'I had shivers again,' Kostya said. 'Is that normal?' 'Of course. What is the point of it? You have to deeply feel the shivers that appear in your head with the first inhale. You have to feel them running inside of your arms and, most importantly, how they jump out of the center of your palms into the earth. That is, you have to feel your inhales and exhales. And you should not have any outside thoughts at all. This is the most difficult thing to do. When I concentrate on the tip of my nose, the thoughts start coming to my head, catching on each other. And the most amazing thing is that I do not even notice when they appear.' That's right. It shows that we are not used to controlling our thoughts in our daily life. That is why they guide us in any direction they want, confusing us in their logical chains. Meanwhile, an uncontrolled thought leads mainly to negative things since it is controlled by the animal nature in a human. That's why there are different spiritual practices and meditations to learn, first of all, to control the thought. We talked a little more about the concerns of our home practices, and then we began the next meditation. Today, we will unite two parts of the meditation into one, Sensei said, so that you understand how it should work and aim to reach it in your individual training. Now, find a comfortable standing position. Following his words, we relaxed as usual and concentrated on the meditation practice. First, we concentrated on the tip of the nose like before. Then, the teacher said, without distracting your attention and vision from the tip of your nose, inhale with the bottom of your stomach, with your stomach and chest. Exhale through your shoulders, arms, and palm chakrans into the earth. With the exhale, a small light flares up more and more. Breathe in. Breathe out. Breathe in. Breathe out. Concentrate on the nose tip. Breathe in. That's when I found myself completely confused. As soon as I began to concentrate on the streamlet, which I could feel clearly as a partial movement through the arms, I immediately lost control over my nose tip. And as soon as I began concentrating on the flashing nose tip, my streamlet disappeared. It all happened when unwanted thoughts appeared in my mind. Somehow, I was unable to combine it all. During one of my next attempts, I heard Sensei's voice informing us of the end of the meditation. As it turned out, this happened not only with me but with my friends as well. It is natural, Sensei said. You should not be thinking, just observing. Then you will succeed. It seemed completely unachievable to me. But I was encouraged by the fact that Nikolai Andreevich and the senior guys didn't have any problems with this meditation. It means that there's still hope, I reassured myself. If they can do it, why can't I do the same? I just have to practice hard. That's the point. It was then I realized that even in my thoughts I had started to speak using Sensei's words. While I was reflecting on this, one of the guys came up with a question. So, you want to say that the way to self-cognition starts with observing yourself and your thoughts? Of course. Mastering self-observation and control over your thoughts can be achieved little by little during everyday training. And for this, you need an elementary knowledge base. It's a natural approach to any training, either physical or spiritual. Just a simple example. A man lifts a weight of 20 kilos. If he trains for a month, he will easily lift 25 kilos and so on. The same happens at the spiritual level. If you are prepared, it will be much easier for you to master more difficult techniques. But there are a lot of different meditations and their modifications. It's difficult to understand which one leads to the pinnacle. Kostya, as usual, showed off his erudition. The pinnacle is yet too far. All these meditations that exist in the world are just an alphabet that has always been there. While the real knowledge leading to the pinnacle starts with the ability to compose words out of this alphabet and to understand their meaning. As for reading books, it's already a privilege of the chosen ones, so to say. Oh my, everything is so complicated, Andre said. There is nothing complicated about it. You just need the desire. And what if a person has the desire but also has doubts? Slava asked. If a person has doubts, if someone should beat his head with a heavy sledgehammer so that he understands that, yes, it is truly a sledgehammer, then that means that such a person is very much stuck in matter, in the logic and egoism of his thoughts, of his mind, if he possesses one at all. The guys smiled at these words, and Sensei went on. If a man sincerely strives towards self-cognition with pure faith in his soul, he will surely succeed. It's a law of nature, and it is even more so for a spiritually developed personality. Andre said thoughtfully, Well, the alphabet is clear, but I don't quite understand about the composition of words. Is that also a meditation? Let's say it's something higher, a spiritual practice, an ancient primordial technique that allows one to work not only with the consciousness, but, what is more important, with subconsciousness. There is a set of certain meditations that lead to a corresponding spiritual level. Everything is simple. The main point is that an individual should, at first, overcome his guard, his material thinking, with its invariable desires to stuff the gut, put on a rag, and conquer the whole world. The same eternal truth as usual, and the same eternal stumbling block. If an individual succeeds in stepping over it, he will become a human. I wonder, what are the achievements of perfecting one's body through training attributed to? Yura asked. It's one of the ways of learning the alphabet. Recently, Yura and I watched a video about martial arts. Ruslan inserted into the conversation. And before it, they showed a documentary on people's achievements in self-perfection of their body. Just imagine this trick. One guy put a spear edge to his throat, attached its handle to a minivan, and pushed it without hands, without injuring himself. Another one lay on his back under heavy things, and nothing happened to him. The third one smashed bricks with a blow of his hand. But the most interesting one was at the end. They took an ordinary bull bone and poured highly concentrated acid over it. Of course, it was destroyed. Then they poured the same acid over a man. It immediately destroyed his clothes but brought no harm to his body. Incredible! Andre exclaimed. I can't believe it! It's quite a normal occurrence, Sensei said, evenly as always. A person's capabilities are limited by his imagination. And what was that? Qigong? Well, let's say, aside from Qigong, there are a lot of similar techniques, but the source of the knowledge, including that of Qigong, is the same. That is, this is a work with energy Qi, the constructive energy of the air. I have read somewhere that Qi is life energy, and you call it constructive. Why? Kostya asked. Because energies, chakrans, channels, and even energy centers in different teachings are called by different names. For example, under the energy Qi in yoga, they mean noble, restoring energy. But in the science of lotus, Qi originally meant a powerful destructive energy. The same applies to Qi. After staying silent for a while, the teacher added, People just suppose, but they don't possess precise information about the real nature of this knowledge. That is why they mix up the names. As they say, it's better to stand on the head than to hang in the air. That's true, Volodya agreed. To paraphrase my favorite poster, which is an eyesore to everyone in our house, there is no such obstacle that we can't create for ourselves. The guys smiled. What is Qigong in relation to the art of lotus? Andre returned again to the serious issues. To explain in terms you can understand, Qigong is like a kindergarten, whereas the art of lotus is like, let's say, an academy of sciences. One of the first stages in learning the highest art is full control over the thoughts. If you can control your thoughts, you will have power over everything. Oh, so I can, for instance, Slava started to talk with excitement. No, you cannot, because you will control your thoughts. That is, you'll be unable to do anything negative or wrong. That is the whole point. If in the case of Qigong we learn it and train, in the art of lotus we don't train. We recall that which is inherent in our soul. And those body phenomena we have seen in the film, is it possible for us to learn them? Ruslan asked, thinking about something. Of course. It's easy if you can use this energy in the right way. And what do we need for this? Elementary skills, concentration of breathing, and a certain understanding of the essence of this phenomenon. I just can't grasp it, Yura said in a thoughtful way. How did that guy manage to break bricks with his hand? Did you want him to break them with another part of the body? Zhenya poked fun at him. That's possible as well. Sensei smiled. If you want strongly enough to do so. The point is that with a certain amount of concentration and breathing exercises, you can accumulate the Qi energy in any part of the body, in this case, in the hand. And at the moment of the blow, the chakran opens up in the palm, and all this power is released to break something. A very important point here, I say it again, is the very process of thought concentration, that is, the process of focused concentration. Does it have any effect on the change in brain activity? Nikolai Andreevich asked. Sure. It creates a very interesting process in the brain. To put it in medical terms, a beta rhythm may be registered in the moments leading up to the blow, as well as during full mental concentration. A few seconds before the blow itself, a person stops thinking about what he is doing. At this moment, his brain activity changes from beta rhythm to alpha rhythm. And that is similar to the state of shock. It is exactly in this state that a blow is being struck. It is like a stoppage of time, perhaps. There is nothing difficult in it, just different physics, that's all. We have one soldier in our platoon who breaks bricks. Volodya joined the discussion. The others tried to imitate him but didn't succeed except with board punching. That's natural, the teacher uttered. The mistake of many people is that they try to think too much, to analyze the situation. That's why they cannot succeed. Can you break bricks? Andrei asked, unable to resist a temptation to see everything with his own eyes. It's easy, just take a hammer and go for it, Sensei joked. No, I mean with your hand, Andrei specified. Why soil the hands? It's better to use a piece of paper. A piece of paper? Yes, I do not guarantee as to the bricks, but if it's something wooden, easily. Does anybody have a sheet of paper? We started hastily looking in our pockets. Volodya tore a piece of paper out of his notebook, about 5 centimeters wide. Yura found a dry branch not far from us, around 3 to 4 centimeters in diameter. Does anybody want to try? The teacher suggested. The guys in turn waved a piece of paper over the stick like true card players, until they ripped the paper, but nothing changed. Volodya had to tear off another piece of paper. Sensei offered this piece of paper to me and Tatiana. No, we waved our hands. If these guys were unable to do it, what can be said about our muscles? Muscles don't play any role here. It can be done by anybody who doesn't doubt his abilities. With these words, the teacher gripped a piece of paper between his forefinger and thumb in his outstretched hand. He concentrated and started to do a set of breathing exercises. After that, the paper started to vibrate a little bit. Its movement gradually slowed down and soon it stopped moving at all and became straight. In less than a minute, Sensei raised his hand slowly and cut the stick with one smooth movement. The cut looked as if it were made by something iron and sharp. Wow, that's super, our amazed group exclaimed. We kept looking at the branch, at the paper, and at Sensei with one silent question. How did he do it? Nikolai Andreevich ventured a guess doubtfully. Was it a trick? You must have broken the branch with your finger in the very last moment. Really? It was Sensei's turn to get surprised. Have you ever seen a trick like this one? He threw the piece of paper that went into the nearest tree, just like a knife blade, complete with a metal sound. Several seconds after, hardly having had time to put our lower jaws back in place, we rushed to the tree, as if there were an answer to the eternal question from Shakespeare, to be or not to be. Nikolai Andreevich himself took out the paper blade, even tasted it and then handed it around. Indeed, in all respects, the former piece of paper had turned into an ordinary metal plate with all features typical to it. We stood completely at a loss, unable to believe our own eyes. Suddenly, the plate in Slava's hands started to lose its shape, gradually turning into an ordinary piece of paper. Slava noticed it, threw it into the air, and jumped quickly away with a piglet scream, causing a corresponding reaction not only in us, but in the senior guys as well. Volodya was the first to collect himself. He carefully picked up the former page of his notebook and said in a bass voice, "Why are you making noise? It's just a piece of paper." We looked at the teacher. It's all right. It has simply spent its power. When we calmed our stormy emotions, Sensei explained, "You have seen one more feature of the Tsi energy, its ability to accumulate ions of metal. Since Tsi is constructive energy, so to say, a concomitant one, I concentrated and mentally inserted ions of iron into this piece of paper. My thought was implemented by Tsi, which, through my breath, brought these ions from the air into the paper. That's why the paper turned into a metal plate for a little while. Tsi is a free energy. That's why it dissolved in space in a few minutes, thus returning this item to its original form." "Great," Ruslan said with admiration. "And is it possible to see 2 kilos of gold for yourself this way?" The guys burst out laughing. "Theoretically, it's possible." Sensei smiled. But in reality, it's like the saying in the Winnie the Pooh cartoon, if there's honey, it instantly disappears. Remember physics. In order to retain ions of metal, you need strong molecular compounds. While these ions are connected by the Qi energy, combined with psychic energy. Qi is the connecting link between ions of metal, while psychic energy creates a shape of an object for a short period of time. But there will be no density as such. Wow! The crowd buzzed in excitement. So that is the practical use, Kostya discovered for himself. And here I was thinking, what's the use of all this? That's great. We can do so much with this, Ruslan said with a smile. Everyone's eyes shone with excitement, and the guys started to discuss how to make use of this knowledge. Sensei observed our stir, keeping silent. And the more we expanded on the situation in jokes, the gloomier and more serious his face became. Finally, he said, I see that you guys have too much animal nature in you. We're just joking, Ruslan uttered, trying to make an excuse for all of us. Many a true word is spoken in jest. Right, agreed Volodya, who was also silently observing our jokes. Otherwise, it will be the same story as with the ninjas. We didn't understand whether he was joking or speaking seriously. What do you mean? Andrei asked. What I said, Volodya said in a bass voice. We looked at Sensei questioningly. Yes, that really happened, Sensei said. Once a whole clan of ninjas were liquidated because they used spiritual knowledge with selfish motives. We haven't heard about it, Ruslan said. Tell us. Yes, tell us, we backed him up. There is nothing to tell. As long as ninjas trained their bodies and mastered their skills, they flourished. Nobody paid attention to them, actually. They were just hired assassins. But when ninjas started to master spiritual practices and learnt something, they began using this knowledge for their material enrichment. It was a real hour of triumph for ninjas, so to say, their prime and twilight at the same time. They gained fame immediately as invincible superkillers, owing to spiritual practices. Ninjas developed their extraordinary abilities. They were able to turn everything into a weapon, any piece of paper or cloth, that is any object at hand. They mastered advanced camouflage techniques, learnt to jump very high and from a great height, without any harm to their health, and so on. That's great, Slava burst out. You shouldn't admire them, much less make idols of them, the teacher said straightforwardly, seeing Slava's reaction. They were just a gang of hired ignoble assassins who killed from behind, on the sly, from an ambush. They were foul scum and cannot be called otherwise. They were directed by their animal nature. They didn't have any honor. While honor is, in fact, one of the attributes of the overall spirituality of a human, not just of a warrior, meaning when he lives by high moral values, a man without honor is nobody and nothing. And what happened to the ninjas? Yura asked. Well, as is usual in such cases, when they started to use spiritual practices for gaining their own material enrichment, they were liquidated. The guys bombarded Sensei with questions. But Ruslan was the most insistent of all. How did they get this spiritual knowledge if they used it for their own devious purposes? They didn't get it. Ninjas stole it. More precisely, they wormed out the technique of meditations through deceit. And then they cultivated this seed of knowledge themselves. But they used it for bad things. That's why they were punished. Who punished them? You said yourself that they reached such a height that they became invulnerable to people. Andrei put his question to Sensei. Sensei grinned and cited his favorite saying. You see, for every Vijay there is a Raja. If there is military science, there is somebody who governs it. It's the same with spiritual practices. If there are spiritual practices, there is someone who controls the use of these practices. This knowledge is actually called spiritual because it is intended for spiritual enrichment of an individual, not material enrichment, especially through killing of one's own kind. I have read that ninja schools still exist, Kostya remarked. Yes, but the truth is, modern ninja schools are just a miserable parody of those that existed in ancient times. Yes, they still have ninjas' techniques and tools, But all this training came to a stop on the crude, physical level, and the door to further perfection is closed. As the law says, spiritual is for spiritual. And if you guys strive to learn the art for financial gain or satisfaction of your megalomania, Sensei shook his head, gazing upon us, no good will come of it. Why? Slava asked. Firstly, you will never learn anything. And secondly, at the very least you will get schizophrenia. If you are lucky, of course. Yeah, that's a nice prospect, Ruslan said, smiling. Well, you are safe from that, Zhenya said, chuckling. But we are not going to kill anybody. Andrei was looking for excuses. Physically, maybe not. But your thoughts contain too much of a beast, and this is the first step towards aggression and violence. And what are we to do now? Control your thoughts, every second. After a short silence, Sensei added, looking at Andrei, have you ever thought about who you actually are? Who you are in essence? Have you thought about how you perceive the surrounding world? Not from the point of view of physiology, but from the point of view of life. Who are you? How do you see? How do you hear? Why do you feel? Who in you understands and who exactly perceives? Look inside of yourself. Sensei continued addressing the guys. Have you ever thought at all about the infinity of your consciousness? About what thought is? How it's born and where it goes? Have you thought about your thoughts? Well, Andrei became confused. I think all the time. Reflect on things. It only seems to you that it's you who thinks and it's you who reflects. But are you sure that these are your own thoughts? Whose else? This body is mine, therefore the thoughts are mine as well. If they are yours, try to observe them for at least one day, where they come from and where they disappear to. Dig through your thoughts thoroughly, and what will you see there except shit? Nothing. Just violence, just ugly things, just the desire to gorge yourself, to put on fashionable rags, to steal, to make money, to buy, to raise your megalomania. And that's all. You will see for yourself that all thoughts generated by your body end with one thing, the material procurement around you. But is it really what you are inside yourself? Look into your soul and you will encounter the beautiful and eternal. Your true self. All this external vanity that exists is just seconds. Do you realize this? We stood silent. Suddenly, this scene seemed very familiar to me. It already happened to me once, in exactly the same way down to the smallest details. This word-for-word discussion, and this glade, and these bright stars, and most importantly, this voice familiar to the innermost of my heart, this kind face. I knew for sure that this had already happened. But when and where? I tried to exert my memory, but I was unable to recollect it. I shook my head a little to get my consciousness out of this deadlock and back on track. Sensei went on. You have lived 16, 22, 30 years, and you, about 40 years. But each of you, do you remember how you lived? No. There are just some miserable scraps, associated with emotional surges at that. Yes, Nikolai Andreevich said in a thoughtful way. Life passed so quickly that I didn't even notice it. All the time I spent studying, working, dealing with insignificant, endless family problems. There was no time to think about myself, about my soul, since there were always urgent matters. Exactly, Sensei agreed. You think about the future and about the past, but you live in this very moment called now. And what is now? It's a precious instant of life. It's a gift from God that should be used rationally. Because tomorrow is a step into uncertainty, and it's quite possible that it may be your last step in this life, a step to the abyss, to infinity. But what will happen there? Each of you believes that he has plenty of time on earth. That's why you don't think about death. But is that so? Each of you may die any second, for any reason seemingly independent of yourself as a biological being on the one hand. But on the other hand, you are not just a biological being, you are a human who is endowed with a particle of eternity. Once you realize this, you will understand that your fate is in your hands, and a lot of it depends on you. And not only here, but also there. Just think it over. Who are you? A perfect biorobot or a human? An animal or a spiritual creature? Who? Well, a human. Maybe. Ruslan said, exactly. Maybe. And what is a human, in fact, have you thought? Go deep inside of this question. Who feels in you? How do you move in space? Who moves your extremities? How do emotions arise in you? Why do they arise? And do not shift the blame onto someone who bothered you, offended you, or vice versa, that you envied, gloated, gossiped about. Is it your spiritual nature speaking in you? Find a crystal wellspring of your soul within you, and you will understand that all this material glare, cars, apartments, houses, social status, all this material wealth you spend your conscious life to achieve will turn into dust. Dust which, in this wellspring, will immediately be transformed into nothing. Meanwhile, life passes by. That life which you can use for transforming yourself into the endless ocean of wisdom. What is the purpose of life? Have you ever thought about it? The highest purpose of life of each individual is the cognition of his soul. Everything else is temporary and passing, just dust and illusion. The only way to come to know your soul is through your inner love, through moral purification of your thoughts, and through an absolutely firm confidence in reaching this goal. That is, through internal faith. As long as you have a glimmer of life in you, it's still not too late to cognize yourself, to find your origin, the holy, life-giving spring of your soul. Sort yourself out, and you will understand who you actually are.